All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for being here. Could you please introduce yourself and what you do?
Hello. Sure. My name is Václav Pavlín. I'm a solution engineer for Waku, which is part of Logos, which is a wider initiative kind of focusing on network states and parallel societies. And we are all part of one company called Institute of Free Technology, where we are trying to build various technologies supporting decentralization, privacy, and censorship resistance.
I am Aaron Bendersky, aka Chair. I am the program manager at Waku. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having us.
No worries. I've been reading through your documentation. So I spent actually like maybe 2 years trying to work on communication technology. I've always been like really interested in it. I eventually kind of gave up on it. It's a pretty hard pursuit, one, and then also I always wonder, like, is there actually a market for this? Like, if you see something like Signal, just as an example, uh, it's hard to get people to one care about it and then figure out a way to monetize it without encroaching on people's privacy. So, for those who don't know, what does Waku do? And then at a bigger level, what does the Institute of Free Technology do?
Okay. So I just want to acknowledge what you said, that building communication technologies is hard, and the market is kind of problematic, because for us, for Waku, and I'll really get to explaining what it is in a bit. But for us, for Waku, it's more complicated because I'm not 100% sure if there is a clear competitor. Right? Like if you have multiple DEXs, you can compare their features and fees and whatnot. If you have multiple blockchains, you can compare transaction per seconds, and you can compare how many validators they have and things like that. But then if you look at Waku and you start comparing, a lot of these things that you would compare to are compromised a lot on various values that we do not want to compromise on, like privacy and censorship resistance and decentralization and inclusivity, so anyone can run a node, and anyone, regardless of where they are or what kind of internet they run on, they should be able to connect to the network and things like that. So it's really, really hard, and it's really, really hard to.
It is. Oh yeah. I'll start. I'll ask you a few questions about the difficulty soon because there's just a few things that from a surface level that I got into that were very difficult. I want to give a chance for Aaron to answer.
I know, yeah, this was pretty comprehensive. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, it's this is the first time I interview two people at the same time. Um, the question is like, yeah, it's mostly about how do you like what are the difficulties that you've gone through when working with Waku, and like what is Waku on a deeper level? I don't think a lot of people know what it is. It's a protocol from my understanding, so it's not necessarily available to the end user. Um,
Yeah,
go
one of
ahead.
the most common questions, even one that I got yesterday was, is Waku a Twitter alternative, for example? It would be a choice for the developer building the Twitter alternative, whether or not they want to use the Waku protocol for the reasons that Václav had mentioned, permissionlessness and privacy, inclusivity. So I say for the average, even the average Web3 crypto, more technically savvy user is still, it's not as clear of a explanation for what Waku is. What I mean, essentially, it's a protocol. It's a protocol that developers can and maybe should choose to use, depending on what their values are and what they want their application to be. But for it takes a more technical person to be able to more fully grasp what Waku is in terms of its potential and what can be built on top of it. And that's probably one of the larger challenges that we have in our communication, is sort of contextualizing Waku for the greater population.
I'll take a stab at saying what actually Waku is, because we are kind of dancing around with it. So Waku is an infrastructure-focused protocol. As you said, it's not an user-facing protocol. It's focusing on infrastructure and on developers building on top of that infrastructure. And then from the perspective of a developer and someone building a project, Waku consists of three things mainly. the protocol, which is the definition of what can travel over Waku and how how nodes are connected and how they discover each other, as it is with any peer-to-peer based technology. We are based on lit peer-to-peer. Specifically, our reference implementation is in NIM, so it's a NIM lit peer-to-peer library. Now, so that's the protocol. That's specifications. It's all open source. Second part of that is SDKs. So I want to use Waku. So what do I do? I pick a language. I take a look whether there is an SDK or whether there is a C bindings ability to call to some other implementation. So maybe I want to build front end. So we have a JS Waku SDK. So I go import it, install it, add it to my project, instantiate a node, connect to the network, and start using it, right? And then its third part is the network. We have a Waku network, which is like a one official sanctioned network, and there could be many. There already are many networks. The one that we have defined is also, there's a specification for it. It's called the Waku network right now, like Gen 0, I think we are at. And the idea is that it's a rate limited, protected, privacy preserving, open decentralized network of nodes. There is probably around 2,000 nodes right now, which provide relay capabilities. So if you publish a message, they will relay the message throughout the network so that nodes connected to other nodes will receive the message. And they also offer kind of a higher level services like light push and filter for edge nodes. So if I am a mobile phone or a browser, I can connect to a particular node and receive and send messages and not being part of that relay, which obviously consumes more bandwidth. And then they also provide short-term memory, which we call Waku Store Protocol, where if I disconnect and reconnect back to the network, I can query some other nodes and say, hey, I've been offline for 5 minutes or an hour. Can you give me all the messages that I missed that I'm interested in? So these three things: protocol, SDKs, and the network.
Okay, that's a very good technical explanation. And to summarize for less technical people, it's a communication protocol that's open source and privacy preserving. It's built using like very standard open source protocols. It's peer-to-peer. And from there, like there's a bunch of questions that I have to ask. So a bit of backstory on my end. I've always, like since I think I was maybe 15, 16, I've been using PGP keys. I've been like, that's how I got into crypto originally, is like buying weed online. Figuring out how to use Tor. And I've always been interested in privacy technology. There are a lot of different chat applications, which I assume most people that hear about Waku will label it as like a communication or a chat application, less so other types of communication. But there are a bunch on the market that have some form of privacy preserving or anonymity built into them. Like you can think from Snapchat to Signal. There was one called Kik that was popular a long time ago, where it had only like a memory of maybe 100 messages, and then it deletes everything after that. So all of these different applications, they exist out there. And one of the difficulties that I, from the outside looking in, a user of these applications, is how do they make money without actually abusing their power, right? So things like WhatsApp, as much as people say, oh, it's privacy preserving, WhatsApp makes their money probably via data collection and using their data either on a government level or selling it to brokers. Things like Telegram rely on subscriptions, which de-anonymize people by default. Signal relies on donations. And so there's like, how do you make money, and how do you incentivize people to run relays and nodes and deal with keeping this thing up? Like, because you need storage, you need servers that are constantly on, and you need to incentivize that. And it can't just be like ideological, because people turn their nodes off, eventually, or something happens, or in their country communication is banned. So these are like two financial difficulties that I guess I would like to discuss first. Do you guys have you guys brushed up against these problems, and how have you dealt with them?
I can go, but I also want to give Aaron space. So depending on what you want to do.
These are great questions. These are some of the meat and the core of the issue currently, and some of the milestones that we are currently working towards, specifically incentivization. Currently, it is a completely altruistic practice to run a Waku node, and there is no explicit incentivization other than contributing to the network at this time. However, that is being researched and worked on from a number of different angles. I have a clear picture of the legal team in my mind now as I wonder what direction I am allowed to go in. I would say to keep it broad and maybe not specific enough for most people's taste, I would say that incentivization is something that is currently being worked on. And at this moment, I guess I'm just repeating myself, but at this moment, it is really an altruistic practice, whether it's node running or building on top of Waku. As long as it aligns with your ideals, probably the solution for you. Václav, do you want to take a stab at it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the question has two parts. One is current funding. So Waku originally came out as a successor of Whisper, came out of Status. So Status, the messenger, started building with Whisper, figured out it doesn't work, it doesn't scale. They tried to change it, they tried to modify it, but it still didn't scale. They couldn't make it work. So they completely redesigned it into what we have now as Waku. So initially, basically, Status funded Waku. Then Waku was spun off, and IFT as a company is funding Waku development. And as Aaron said, on our roadmap, one of the milestones is sustainability, or the broader theme is sustainability, and one of the milestones is incentivization. A lot of the roadmap is public. I mean, all of it probably, right? There is a Waku org on GitHub. There is a PM repo, like a project management repo, and you can see the whole roadmap, including a Gantt chart, or at least a step on Gantt chart. I don't know how updated it is. Aaron would know because he is maintaining that for the most part.
And roadmap.logos.co as well for all of the logos. Yeah, and there's a Waku section specifically there that goes into all of the milestones and the deliverables.
Yeah, we also have a forum where all these are discussed. Like if there is a proposal for a protocol, like or part of the protocol, like the incentivization, the discussion usually starts as a GitHub issue or as a forum post, and then it goes from there to POC to actual implementation and things like that. So we can definitely find links for each part of this conversation. And if anyone is particularly interested in incentivization, there are plans, there are explainer articles, blog posts, things like that explain how it could work. Whether it will, we don't know. Now to that part of like, why would people run the nodes? If you're serious about running a decentralized application where the whole stack is decentralized, or using probably decentralized storage like maybe Filecoin, maybe Arweave, maybe Codex, which is one of the Logos projects as well. If you're using blockchain, and then if you want your communication in the application to be decentralized, you need to run a peer-to-peer network. You can run a peer-to-peer network without Waku, and there are many peer-to-peer networks that do not use Waku, and it makes sense because they are very highly specialized, like various blockchain networks like Bitcoin and Ethereum or IPFS, and they are very specialized in what they are doing and what kind of data they are passing around. Waku is aiming to be general, so any data is valid as long as there is as it fits into the protocol specification, basically, which is very broad. The only limits are rate limiting, so number of messages per epoch, and size of the message. Basically, those are the only limits that you have. Now, if you're serious about decentralization and privacy and censorship resistance, you need peer-to-peer network. If you don't want to build your own peer-to-peer network because you don't know how to, or you just don't want to do it, you can rely on Waku. But if you are using Waku, you actually have to contribute to the network, at least partially. Because if you want to have reliable, long-running nodes somewhere in the network, they have to be connected through the relay protocol. And if they are connected through the relay protocol, they have to be relayers of the messages, hence supporting the network, right? Obviously, we don't have that many applications, definitely not on the Waku network. That would actually amount to 2,000 nodes. So those are just people that want to either support the network, a bunch of us running nodes, random people from community. They are coming to Discord every day asking about how do I run a node? What is the reward for running nodes? And we keep telling them there is no reward. There is no explicit plan. We are working on incentivization. Eventually, maybe, hopefully there is incentivization, but we have no clue. So right now it's really purely altruistic. But then also if you're building on top of Waku, in a lot of cases, you will actually have to run a full node, the relay node, and provide services like filter and light vision store. And that way you are supporting the network as well.
So from my experience, I literally have every single chat application that's got any users on it on my phone. I use all of them. I typically like use Signal for family and friends, and then Telegram for clients, and WhatsApp for people that just don't have anything else. I don't use Messenger. I've used like all of the different types of privacy preserving communication apps that are at any level popular. And I've noticed that there's a spectrum with, like, let's say the least private, the least anonymous is the meta realm. So this includes Facebook Messenger, this includes WhatsApp, this includes VR chat. Like these are like, they don't have any kind of privacy preserving features in them, and on the contrary. But what they do well is like the user experience is excellent. So if you open like Messenger, you can play chess, you can do like a million things inside of a single app. You can send money, you can buy things, you can. It's a great experience, but and it's built off of the fact that it's centralized, right? They have full top bottom control over this thing, and they can do anything they want with it. And then when you get down to like, I guess the most popular is Signal of privacy preserving on the other end, and it doesn't have like great chat rooms. It doesn't have a lot of features. The file system set up with it isn't connected to your phone. Like it's its own separate thing where you have to send over the message to Signal in order to be able to transfer it in the app, and it sacrifices a lot on user experience. And so you have the spectrum. I would assume you guys are even farther away from something like Signal because you're at the protocol level. How do you make trade-offs? Like what are some trade-offs that you're willing to make? What are trade-offs that you're not willing to make? How do you decide on these things? Given that you're a peer-to-peer network, you're open source, people can fork it. Like what is your decision-making process when it comes to trade-offs and where the tech is growing?
Yeah, I would also make this distinction. I was gonna make it in a previous question, but I forgot. So again, you mentioned that, but I want to make stress that Waku is not a chat protocol. We have a team that is like a chat protocol team focusing on building an actual scalable chat protocol on top of Waku, but Waku is not a chat application. It's infrastructure. So you can't install Waku on your phone and start talking to your friends. That's Status. Status is using Waku as a backbone for its communication, and every single message, every single thing you do with Status, like changing a profile picture, actually goes over Waku to distribute to other people. So that's the first thing. So the question of like what trade-offs do we have to make in context of other chat applications would be a question to Status. But from the perspective of Waku, we have a set of principles. I think they are written in a vac.dev website somewhere, and then also on Status website, and probably also on IFT website, where we basically say like we will never compromise on privacy, censorship resistance, and permissionlessness, basically, right? And then there's a bunch of more, but those are kind of a key to me. Because, for example, I don't believe there is a thing called decentralization. I don't think what it means. I don't know what it means. I don't think it exists. I think it's a set of features where if you have them in your project or protocol, then you may call it decentralized. But like decentralization itself, that just does not exist. So we tried not to compromise on any of these values like privacy, censorship resistance, being permissionless, being available to be run on anywhere in the world, on low bandwidth and things like that. Where we compromised, like I don't think there is an explicit example that I can give that I'm sure that other people would come up with something, but I like right now, I know, like, for example, if you're bootstrapping your node, so you're starting it for the first time, regardless whether it's in your browser or whether it's a full node, you have to talk to some other nodes to discover the network, to discover the network of the nodes. And those bootstrap nodes at the moment are mostly run by us, as in Waku team or IFT, or if you are using Status, there is a Status bootstrap fleet. And you can go to fleet.status.im, I think is the URL, and there is a list of nodes, like I don't know, 60 nodes of various fleets related to Waku, related to Codex, related to Status, related to Nimbus, like all these nodes. And that's a part where it's centralized, because if we shut them down, then you can't bootstrap unless you find someone else who gives you that URL, that multi-address, so that you can bootstrap from some existing node. We're, again, working towards full decentralization there, as in you just start up the node and it will somehow magically discover other nodes without relying on a particular set of predefined nodes. But that's where we are right now. So that's like one compromise. But those nodes are really only used for bootstrapping. So you connect to them, you ask them for other peers, and you disconnect from them for the most part, right? And then you use all those other peers, and you may connect to them back again later if you rediscover them, basically. But there are some tweaks like that. But from the perspective, for example, of privacy and being an infrastructure project, one thing that we needed to clear out is rate limiting. Right? We can't let anyone post any amount of messages on the network, and that's a big issue with peer-to-peer networks. And you have multiple approaches to this, right? If you know what your message has to look like and what is the content of that message, like in blockchain, you know how to calculate a next valid state transition. So if someone starts sending you invalid state transitions, you will just ignore him. You can't do that for a general network where the payload is probably encrypted and you have no clue what the payload is. So we needed to come up with something else, and we are using something called rate limiting nullifiers, which is zero-knowledge-based, privacy-preserving technology, which as soon as you obtain a blockchain membership registration, and there is multiple ways how to obtain it, you can just interact with the contract yourself, or someone sends it to you, or you can do it via some stealth address and things like that. Once you obtain that registration and you have some kind of credential to that RL and rate limiting membership set, you can start publishing messages, and the nodes will rate limit you, as in ignore your messages if you go over that rate limit, right? But we know how many messages you can publish and how many messages from a given membership has been published. We don't know who the member is, who is publishing those messages, and who is the credentials from, and things like that, right? So these zero knowledge based approaches help with privacy a lot, and we are trying to use them. So again, privacy is really core to Waku, and censorship and the decentralization, as in being able to not having to rely on a particular provider of services to be able to use it.
I have a question specifically for Aaron in a minute in terms of like target audiences and growth. And before I do that, like there's a friend that I actually interviewed on this podcast about a year, maybe 2 years ago, who's building something called Astral, and it does what you guys are. Well, it's similar enough to what Waku's trying to accomplish, except it's much more focused on the network layer. So in terms of you have a node, it wants to find another node, so you can pass it an IP address as long as it has the software installed on it. It'll try to connect either via Bluetooth or via Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, or via Bluetooth and Wi-Fi then mobile. It'll like find a way to get from one node to another. It'll like do different approaches to try to get to that IP and try to connect with that node and do the handshake. And it's very interesting. He built it specifically for video storage. Like there was a lot of like YouTube. I think it was around 2020 when a lot of YouTube videos were taken down. He's one of the like COVID people, like the COVID nutheads that are like, oh, they're taking our privacy away, which to a certain degree they are. They're banning or they're taking our videos down. And so we built this system, and it works. Like I actually tried it on my machine. It's very, very interesting to see like how you could do things, or like how you do things on a deeper level. But this just takes me to target audiences, because a lot of what you're saying, it makes sense to me because I've actually been interacting with this stuff for a very long time. But I would assume like a random person or somebody that's maybe not in this realm of tech wouldn't understand. So the question for Chair is like, who is currently adopting this? How are you guys thinking about expanding your network, finding new people? How do you go about like the education for this? Anything you can tell me in that world. And you're muted, by the way. I think no, actually you're not. It's your icon.
I was. Don't want to subject you to my breathing in between. It's a great question. The current focus is very specifically towards developers, and maybe even more specifically towards developers who are at a decision-making level on a project or a protocol that they are contributing towards. And I would say that the main audience at this point is, in fact, developers at the project level or at the individual level that share the values and are looking for the features that Waku provides to make them aware of Waku, provide them with what they need to build with it. And we have increasing resources, constantly increasing resources to that end. And at this point, that is the main and target audience. And so if we had to split it in two, it would be CTO level developers or decision makers on teams and individual developers. As that expands and as we gain more traction, that should expand to users querying, is Waku under the hood? Is this powered by Waku? What are the privacy guarantees of this application? Is it Waku? I think that is the eventual destination. At this point, the focus is almost 100% on developers and builders that are candidates, or Waku is a candidate for them to use in their stack.
And in terms of adoption, who's already picked this up and started running with it? Is there any like names that people would recognize or any cool use cases that people are building on?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. Well, Status is the Status is the main sort of the reference chat application. There are the two largest, maybe most impressive. Railgun uses Waku to ensure privacy for their users when you're using the Railway application and you are interacting with your Ethereum mainnet tokens or whatever chain they support. Railgun utilizes Waku to signal intents and for solvers so the intents are broadcast over the Waku network. And Václav, please correct me where I might be wrong. Intents are broadcast to the Waku network and picked up by solvers. And so the user activity is shielded via Waku. And that's Railgun. And I think the last number that I saw was already months ago, and it was something like $4 billion worth of value shielded via Railway. That is a DeFi implementation. The Graph Ops, or the Graphene team specifically, their index nodes, as they are sharing information and passing information, validating their data sets, are doing so over the Waku network to protect their identities. So as they need to validate, or as the index nodes need to validate what data they are preserving, or indexing rather, that is done over Waku so that their IPs, their identities are not doxed in the process. And those would be the two. There are a few other. Portrait is a social media application that's very interesting and kind of flips the paradigm of following users to hosting user content and hosting user content via the Waku network. Whereas if I was a follower or a fan of your work, of Václav's work, rather than following your profiles, I would host your profiles via my hosting node. And that way it sort of completely flips the model of a centralized server and users following that. The more content that I'm hosting, the more I make it available to others to consume. I think those would be the three. There are others. The really exciting thing that we've been seeing over the past few weeks and months is there are AI developers that are using Waku to protect the anonymity or privacy of users querying different LLMs. And I think from the query side and also from the inference side and the return, we've seen demos, maybe Václav can go a little deeper on this, of users using the Waku network and Waku messages to pass that data back and forth and have a more anonymous or private AI.
Yeah, just like that's like one of the things I really struggle with the most is like I use AI. I stopped using Google search or any kind of search engine. I just basically talk to the AIs. As long as they're able to provide me a response and give me a link to whatever they're claiming. That's been my workflow for about a year now. But yeah, I there's a lot of things that I refrain from actually interacting with it because I don't want it to know like my identity. And I think it can infer that to a certain degree. Like even if I open like a private window, they probably have my IP, my phone fingerprint, and they're able to use that to like grab context. One thing I'll put on your radar, have you heard of the Mud? So Mud is like a blockchain game engine. I've seen like a whole Minecraft built on top of it. It's in C. It helped like I think C or C++. It helps you build games. So you could build like Minecraft, right? Somebody's built Minecraft and it works on chain. And I think that's a perfect target because they have a lot of users like Milady Chan. What was it? Milady Craft is actually built on top of Mud. So at the protocol level, they're using Mud, and then you can attach this onto Mud and solve like P2P gaming communication. It's MUD. So like if I'm sending a message to somebody, I'm in their server on Minecraft, let's say, and we're playing, I can message them or there's other things that you can do. The reason I always go back to messaging is I think it's the most easily digestible thing for the average listener. Yeah, it's just easily digestible. There was a question that popped up in my head when you were talking about the graph. So no, the portrait. So if you have like data you want to host, say an image or a video, and you want to transfer it or like host it, how would you do that given that you guys have like a rate limiting system and you also limit the amount of I guess bytes in a message? So how do you deal with that? I guess this is more of a question for you, Pavlín. I want to make sure I pronounce that right.
Yeah, for sure. So specifically to answer this, if you want to transfer bigger data, the best solution is to use some decentralized storage, IPFS, RV, codecs, you name it, and then just send the CID, right, or the hash that is addressing the data. That is something that kind of is obvious. We are also looking into providing SDK for that eventually with our chat protocol or whatever it will be called, right? So right now with Status, it's I'm not even sure if you can like they have a higher in their network. They have higher limits. So the Status has its own Waku network basically, where the Status instances communicate. And when you want to send an image, I think it's limited to like 1 megabyte, and they have a limit for 1 megabyte per message, which obviously makes it a bit more bandwidth constrained. Well, no, the other way around, consuming. But then also it allows you to directly send a message via the messaging infrastructure rather than going to offload it somewhere. Now, for example, on the other side of that, I've built an application called Waku, which is a Q&A platform similar to like a simple Q&A when Slido started, and it's fully decentralized, as in it is only running in your browser and then connecting to Waku network, and it's using something called event sourcing. So you're sending change events to the state of the Q&A. So I want to post a question. I want to upvote this other question. I want to do that. I want to do that. So, and then that state gets recomputed locally as it's distributed through the Waku network. And then obviously Waku is ephemeral. So you send a message, it bubbles through the network and it disappears. There is this Waku store. So you can potentially query the message for a couple hours after it's being published. But that's not guaranteed. That will be guaranteed when we have incentivization. But right now, like the store nodes, you never know which store node you connect to and for how long it will store the data. So to make it more persistent, I've integrated codecs into it. So every now and then, the creator of the Q&A will publish a message, will serialize the state, publish it to codecs, and publish the CID over Waku on the content topic that belongs to that Q&A. And then everyone that comes and loads the website and loads the Q&A, they will not go to Waku store protocol to query all the messages, but they will mainly look at, hey, is there a snapshot that I can download and then load all the missing messages that might come after that snapshot. So that is generally the approach that we are kind of explaining to people how they can do this. In general, working with Waku is an interesting paradigm shift from the like a standard client server architectures that we are used to. So if you want to go into kind of a more technical stuff in a sense of, hey, this is how I architect Web2 applications, and now I want to decentralize it. It's very different, right? Especially if you use something like Waku, because Waku is a broadcast network, or someone called it a broadcast network, and I adopted the terminology. So you send a message, and it generally, in a very simplistic world, it goes to every single node in the network. That's a terrible for efficiency, right? Sending a 1 megabyte to every single node in the network means that if there is 2,000 nodes, I'm sending 2,000 megabytes around the network. So that's 2 gigabytes, basically. It gets transferred all in all, plus some redundancies, plus some retries and things like that. So it's terrible. So I always say, like, you need to think about your architecture before you blindly start using Waku, and before you start using it the way you would if it's client server. So all the people connecting to a single server and all the people just talking to that one server, right? So for example, we are talking about AI. AI can be also bandwidth heavy. You may be generating pictures. You may be talking with voice. You may be analyzing some big chunk of text. You are uploading PDFs and things like that. So it may not be practical to send all that information over Waku.
So the way this immediately reminds me of the same thing with Astral. So the way they solved it, or at least the way they're attempting to solve it, is every piece of data that gets transferred via the network is hashed, and then a hash is produced. So this is like a predictable hash. I really, it's a deterministic hash. And then that piece of data is then stored in a decentralized storage network. And then if anybody wants to send the same message again, as opposed to sending the whole message or the whole video or the whole song, you just like recompute the hash, check the decentralized network as the storage. If it exists, great, you use that, and then you just pass CIDs along all over the place, and then you have to a certain degree a predictable amount of data that's floating around the network. Have you guys considered something like this, or is this already part of your architecture?
I mean, well, it's not part of Waku per se. It's a recommended practice, I would say, or best practice for moving around large amounts of data, where the large is very subjective. So for us, the limit on the Waku network, the spec'd out network, is 150 kilobytes per message. So it's a lot for chat application when you're sending text. It's also a lot for general like synchronization between nodes where they need to just say, I'm online and I'm online as well, and I would like to exchange this kind of data, maybe, right? Or I want to send you my temperature or something, some sensor data. But it's not a lot when you're talking about video or audio or even images, right? So at that point, we just say, hey, use some decentralized storage centered around CIDs. That's very predictable. The size is very predictable, and you can very well circumvent the limitations by doing that.
Yeah, even if you're saying something that's like super normal, I don't know, like I had breakfast today, and you can just hash that, and like you still, to a certain degree, you don't want to do that if the gains don't make sense, like if the amount of bytes in the hash is bigger than the message. But you could do this for everything. You can extend it to every message, every text, every image. This this feels to me, I guess sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that yes, you could, but it is not practical, because then you're it introduces a lot of latency. So you only want to do it for big data. I mean, big as in like megabytes and more. The reason is that if you need to get a message with the hash and then query another system, basically another peer-to-peer network of a decentralized storage, to actually get information how to obtain the data, you are introducing a lot of latency. So for smaller data, up until, let's say, 100 kilobytes, I think it makes way more sense to just send the data. For large data over that 100 kilobytes, or if there is a high rate, then just batch it and just send a CID. And it very much depends on the use case, and it very much depends on the particular architecture of the application. we can talk about this for hours, right? Like if I have a client server application where there is 10,000 clients talking to one node, then Waku may not be the best. Tor may be better, right? Because I hide that one node behind Tor, and then everyone else finds it somehow and talks to it. If I have 10,000 nodes that needs to talk to each other, like with status communities, for example, or with Railgun, where there is a bunch of nodes that really need to be hidden, but you don't know how many, we need to find them all, then Waku is much better solution than having a list of Tor onion addresses somewhere listed on a Web2 website or something, right?
So you say it's like a big shift in terms of how you think about building things. I really feel like this is much closer to actual human communication than something like a current day chat app. Like yeah, it's ephemeral. It's simple. It's smaller in context. Like I've never really sent anybody a picture from speech. Like it just makes sense as like this seems a lot more natural, and it also. See, I think I really adopted computers around 2004. That was like the first time I really sat and that this has been a part of my life. But it seems to mimic what I understand about the older internet, where everything's about broadcasting. So you have like, and we've moved along so far away from that. But a lot of people still feel nostalgic towards IRC chats and want to kind of go back to that system. A lot of people love the terminal. Yeah, I
like what you're saying. I love what you were saying. I had a talk about Deepin some time ago at a worldwide software architecture summit at some conference, some online conference. And I had this slide or a set of slides where we started with this computer under your desk, basically running your websites and running all your protocols, right? Like you just run something there and it communicates with other people over internet. And then we moved away from that to like, hey, I put this to a server room, and then I put my server room into someone else's server room, and then I don't even know where the server room is because I do serverless. And now we're coming back with these Web3 peer-to-peer technologies. We're coming back to the to the beginning. Like I run my dApp node on my desk, and it runs the stuff that I use. It runs my communication. It runs my financial stuff with some validating whatever chains I want to validate. It runs my storage with like Codex or IPFS node or something. And we come back to the beginning of like how internet began to be decentralized. And then we centralized everything. And now we realize, hopefully like more people will realize that. We realize that decentralization brings us a lot of comfort and a lot of like we don't have to do anything. But then also it takes a lot from us with the privacy and censorship and like the world being in a weird place right now with weird people being in charge and things like that. And like if you want to have that sovereignty, you need to take care of the services that you are using. And there are software providers, let's say like dAppNode, which allow you to do it simply with nice UI still. But you have to run that. You have to maintain the hardware. You have to own your software in a sense, so that you can go back to that decentralized natural human communication and human interaction.
Well, I think the fear and the ultimate direction we're heading in is all of our devices are going to be like 0 gigabytes of storage or like maybe 1 gigabyte of storage, let's say. And it's all going to be online. Like there's not going to be like an offline device that you can run around and use. Like everything is going to be just a phone that connects to an external server. And if you want to take a picture, it sends it to that server. Like the fact that right now we have storage and we have RAM and all these things in our machines is like if people don't do something with it soon, I think it's just going to increasingly go towards the direction where you have a receiver and you're using it, and basically everything in the world is stored in these like hyper efficient capitalistic systems that it makes sense because I don't necessarily want to run like 15 processes that weigh and bog down my machine, and so I'll keep delegating that to someone else. And I think the average person just wants to delegate as much of the work as possible to other people and focus on their lives. So it's like small things is there needs to be a counterweight there. Go ahead.
I think AI is going to change this potentially, right? It has a big chance to change it. I think we sounds stupid, but we need some major privacy or censorship incident around AI where a big company leaks data intentionally or not. And people start thinking about private AI a lot more. And with various devices that are coming to market, like even those mini PCs, I've bought a mini PC for $500, and it's very capable of doing a code assistance in my VS Code with Continue as a software managing that. And it's very capable. I just plugged in ESP32 and started coding some, like, I need these LEDs to blink, and it just like gave me the code. It just generated the code, and it was a small model running on the mini PC for $500. And it runs here in my room. And I think we're like one major incident away from people actually thinking, hey, I might need an AI device for, like, if I want to use AI as in like talk to it about my personal life, I might need the AI device to be here in my home. We had a podcast on hashing it out with Greg Ossery, the founder of Akash Network, and he talked about it as well. We talked about it a lot there. Where basically, I want everything to be controlled by AI in my home. I just don't want that AI to be controlled by someone else, right? So I want to run my model locally. So if we run an AI model locally as an assistant, as a home control or something, we may also attach other things to it, because the AI will eventually run it for us, right? You just tell the assistant, hey, I also want to run status on this device, and it will just install it and set it up for you, right?
Yeah, how do you, so
Maybe.
technical question is, you have like, so the M3, was it the M3 Ultra, like the Mac Ultra, I think it came out in the market like 2 days ago. It has 512 gigabytes of RAM. And I think, I don't remember how many terabytes of storage, and M3 Ultra chip, which has like this shared GPU, CPU architecture. That is going to be like a huge game changer. It runs R1 just like out of the box. It runs R1 on the machine, and its fidelity is the same as like a hosted. Yeah, it's
You need three. You need
$1,000.
You need two to run R1. You need two of these and XLabs cluster on those to run the R1.
It's still $16,000.
Yeah.
Realistically, if you're a person that uses AI to the degree, like, you make that money back as long as these devices can stay alive for a long time. What I was going to ask is, this is a question, I guess, for Chair, and then for you as well. In terms of like, how did you get into this? What is FIT? Like, why are you in this specific branch of technology? Why do you stay here? IFT, flipped it there.
That's a great question. IFT is the Institute of Free Technology, and the site there's free.technology. That might be my favorite URL ever.
Agreed.
Personally, so I began my self-taught web developer journey around 2015, and that's when I started really beginning to focus. And I had a friend in my ear for many years prior to that saying, like, you should learn to code. You should learn to code. This might be something you might be apt towards. And I ignored him for a while. Around 2015, I started taking it a lot more seriously. And so took the path of Udemy courses, YouTube videos, freecodecamp.org, maybe the best resource of all of them. And at the same time, or shortly thereafter, as I really started going through the paces, I became aware of Ethereum more deeply than just like I had been aware of Bitcoin basic like since 2010, 2011, like when Pirate Bay stuff was really cracking, as a lot of people's initial exposure was. But I kind of put it on the back burner in my mind, and met someone who is now a very close friend at an unsanctioned rave in the Joshua Tree Desert. And we were talking about Bitcoin. And he said, no, and this was already 2016. He said, if you think Bitcoin is cool, you should look at Ethereum. And he sort of gave me the World Decentralized Computer and Database, an arbitrary computer program platform angle of things. And that changed my perspective instantly, or really hyper-focused me on Ethereum. I was incredibly inspired by the words that they had about it. So the next day I went, I think one of my first destinations was Ethereum on Reddit, and sort of all of the different branches that I could find from there. And that was the moment, like August 2016 or somewhere thereabouts, was my like Ethereum pilled moment. At that point, I still probably wasn't even a year into my learning this new craft. But it was at that moment that I was inspired to, my objective became to contribute as meaningfully as I can to the development of Ethereum. That was my goal. How I was going to get there, I didn't know. I had no plan for that, but I knew that's where I was trying to go. And a few different life events happened. The family business that I had been working with my family and helping run for a while was sold. My parents were able to retire, and I had this opportunity to sort of choose my next adventure. I was also recently married and had moved to Boston, which is an incredible city to be in pre-COVID. To be getting into software, really just a great place to learn, and the environment that every major institution is there. So it's a really good environment to grow in. And so I was able to, shortly we moved in June or July of 2018. By October 2018, I started at a healthcare company as a tier 2 technical support agent, and really bug hunter, bug catcher. And the team was incredible. They saw that I was very hungry and eager to learn and willing to take on whatever, just give me whatever. And so they started throwing me more and more issues, instead of identifying bugs to fixing small bugs to fixing broken scripts to eventually, about a year and a half in, I was labeled just engineer, and was there until 2021. As COVID kicked off and I had more time on my hands and everyone was working from home, I started freelancing. First as a front-end developer with Raid Guild, actually. And right around March or April of 2021, I full-time started freelancing, left the healthcare job with great benefits and to the amazement of a lot of people, but keeping that original goal in mind, I really felt it was the time, and there were some people really encouraging me to make the jump. And that's why. And then projects from there, leading. That was 4 years ago already. So I've been sort of full time in crypto and Ethereum since 21. And being so what was amazing, it sort of dawned on me when I joined Waku. I realized Waku being the continuation of Whisper, which was a core protocol defined in the Ethereum white paper, to be here now, contributing and working with Waku. It's it's the realization of that original objective. And I'm incredibly grateful and humbled and inspired every day to be working with people like Václav and the rest of the team. I think there's 21 engineers on the Waku team, and I'm the only non-engineer on the Waku team, and that's and I don't know, it's a source of pride. I don't know if it's a source, but it's very meaningful. Every day, be working towards these objectives. I continue to be very inspired. That was long-winded, but thank you for giving me the space.
No, thank you. It's crazy how similar experiences are. I learned to code. I went into healthcare, and then I went from there into this. And I think it's very common for. Yeah, it's great that you're hungry about it. And what about you? What about you? How did that go? I really don't want to say it wrong. I've been trying my best. I live in Poland, so I'm supposed to know this by now. But go ahead.
That's okay. Well, just for the name, the weirdest pronunciation I've ever heard was Waku, which was in South UK, Kent, I think. I came there for a summer job, and the farmer was like, "Hey, so who's this Waku?" That's probably me, but it's Václav. Yeah, sure, Waku. So whatever works. I mean, I'll respond to other versions of that name. For me, so I've been into computers since, I don't know, forever. I started coding when I was 10, 11, learning JavaScript and HTML, and then PHP, and then whatever. I studied in Brno University of Technology, so all the languages there. And then I joined Red Hat as a package maintainer, really low-level Linux stuff, a bootloader, init system, and then I just randomly jumped around the company, in a sense, working on random projects because people figured out if there is a problem that they don't want to look into or they don't know how to look into, they will just throw it at me and I'll somehow figure it out eventually. So when Docker came around, which is like a very standard thing now, it was not a couple of years ago, believe me, like 10 years ago, it was not, it just didn't exist, right? And now it's omnipresent. So I was one of the first people working on Docker at Red Hat, building images and things like that, building the build systems for images. And then AI came around as like something that is the future. That was before LLMs. So I was in AI before AI was cool. So I was working as an architect for a AI and a data engineering platform called Open Data Hub, which is now a product called OpenShift AI. And then I was very bored with productizing that. So I was in charge of like making it a product, and I hate processes. Sorry, chair, you know that. I hate processes. So when we are like almost done with productizing, I was like, damn, I can't do it anymore. I'll just do something else. And I started learning Solidity, became a Solidity developer, worked for a small Czech startup called BlockCheck for some time as their Solidity person, basically smart contract person. So designed a bunch of contracts and implemented. Then I went on a weird journey with some random people from Australia and New Zealand, where they were like, "Hey, we like you. We want to start a startup with you." And I'm like, "Sure, let's do it." And then 6 months later, they were like, "Hey, we ran out of money. Bye." I'm like, okay. Then I was like, I'm gonna build something of my own. And then I realized I love technology and I love to build stuff, but I have no clue how to sell it. And I was like, I need a job. And like a year before that, someone from Waku reached out like, "Hey, do you want to work with us?" I'm like, "It's awesome, love it, but no." And then a year after that, I was like, "Do you still want me, guys? Please, please." And they're like, "Amazing, let's do it." I did 5 rounds of interviews. It was the longest interview process I ever had. That was a lot of fun. And I joined as a core developer of Waku, the reference implementation. And then probably like 6 months later, there was a new role for solution engineer. I was like, I like that. I will talk to people and I will explain stuff to them. And as you can see, I talk a lot. So they'll just have to accept me talking. So yeah, I started doing that. So I did not join Waku or IFT because of privacy. But after a couple of months of being there and digging into all the projects and digging into all the reasons why Jared Hope started Status initially and then IFT, I was like, well, this is an interesting topic I never thought about. So I have a talk, you can find it on YouTube, called "You Have Nothing to Hide." And in that talk, I explain why there is like every single person on the planet has something to hide. And it can be big things like you are a whistleblower in a major government or company, and it may actually be your life, depending on you being able to hide things. Or it may be just, hey, my wife has a birthday and I forgot I have no present, or I have a present I don't want to tell her. But we all have something to hide, and we need privacy, and we need a way to be able to preserve it privacy. And I joined for needing a job, and I stayed for being really interested in what IFT is trying to push out to the world and to explain to people that privacy and censorship resistance and not having to obey to a government and being able to exit whatever rules you got into, as long as you like have an exit strategy there, is important with all the network state and everything that is coming along. So yeah, that's why I'm here.
I mean, I really respect both of what you guys are doing. I think, I consume freedom technology a lot. Like, there was long periods of my life where I have like prescribed medication from a doctor and I cannot get it in a certain country, or I only get a worse version of it. And Tor has never ever done me wrong. I just go, I buy what I need to. It's sent to my mail. It works. It's cheaper. It's easier to access. It's in every country that I need it to be. And I've used all this communication technology like Signal. I love my wife. I say things to my wife I don't want to say to I don't want other people to have access to or see. I love this technology, but there's a subset of the population, that one subset that is given up, and now their like go-to response is, well, if you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't worry about this. And this is a very common response that I've had with a lot of people, because it's exhausting. It's a lot of work. It means you need to stay up with the technology. It means that your messages are going to take a little longer to get there. Or you need to set up more things on your phone, or you need more RAM on your machine. So that there's that portion of the population, and then there's the portion that benefits off of lack of privacy. I think the whole advertising space is like built on top of people not having privacy. So one thing I'd be really hopeful for in the future is a day where companies can make consistent profit that is not based off of illegal activity or something unethical, that doesn't require you sell people's data, or give up your own data by watching ads. I think that's going to be like a huge revolution. If we could figure out how to fund YouTube videos without ads, that's going to be amazing. It's just not a thing as of now. So that's one thing I'm really looking forward to. Go ahead.
At the same time, like what the people I watch on YouTube, they usually say that the ads revenue is basically almost zero, and they get most of the money from like Patreon and whatever other donation platforms there are. So at one hand, we claim that we need ads, and on the other hand, like,
well, the
people still like
it's the
pay these
discovery.
people.
So I think what YouTube and TikTok does is like it's an engine for discovery that's funded off of ads. And so like you have like all these videos that you can watch. They're hosted. They're easy to host. They're easy to watch, and it's just very expensive. That's why no one else does it. Like YouTube has this cornered market, and it's the discovery. Like the problem with Patreon, I don't think people don't search, right? It's about algorithms. Like everybody's just being fed what they are, or where they're going, so they're just being fed this data. And that's what YouTube does well. It hosts and has the upfront cost that it needs for hosting, and it knows how to feed you what you want. It's a big problem. So but I really do respect what you guys are doing. I work in this space too. It's just not, I mainly work on like product stuff now. I've always wanted to work in communication, and I think that there's something really beautiful about like true communication that is uncensorable. When the Ukraine war started, just something that was in my head is like, I was thinking, okay, what if we have a Google Maps where you could pin, like you could drop a pin, and then you could say a bomb fell here or troops are here, and then nobody can edit that pin, right? And that pin is validated by other people. And then if you think about, okay, how do you actually get this to work? How do you get this to distribute? It becomes this immensely large problem. So I respect a lot what you guys are doing. I guess one question to wrap it off, and question for both of you, maybe you can start, chairs. What are you guys excited for specifically in what you are building in for the future? Like what's keeping, what's the goal on the horizon?
For me personally, the realization of the wider logo stack coming together is something that's a large source of daily inspiration, in that there's this vision that people can dig into logos.co and all the different branches that you'll find, and that essentially the original vision of the Ethereum, defined in the Ethereum white paper, is basically the logo, the three pillars of logos, in the private consensus, private storage, private communication. Really, it's the Ethereum white paper with privacy as a first class feature for all of those protocols, and it's there's work to be done still. Václav specifically is working on Kaku that integrates Codex and Waku. That might be one of the maybe one of the first example implementations of Waku and Codex working together for specifically product. It is the first, yeah, and it probably Status will be highly informed from that, and likely to be the second. But and still fought in, you're probably furthest away, but approaching is Nomos. And so once we have that private consensus, private storage, private messaging, now we have the original and actualized vision of the original Ethereum white paper with privacy as a feature, and then the possibilities become really, really great in terms of the type of user experience that we envision perhaps that we can have. That that's probably the primaries. I would like to see that realized for the world and for the possibilities that it will unlock.
There was very like there was a lot of there's a lot of in what you said. I'm just trying to find the words to follow up on that, because like I can just like repeat the same thing. I think Logos has a lot of potential, and it has not, like, even though people are talking about Logos, the realization of like what you can do if all those components actually work and they work together and they can be combined easily, and there are SDKs that work together and leverage one another. That's crazy, but that's probably years in the future still. With no, like, if we take everything like Nomos in the play, and then Codex being mainnet and well tested, and Waku having all the features that we talk about in the current roadmap. So I'll stay down to earth, and I'll just say I'm really excited about what the Waku team is doing with defining bindings, so being able to use Waku from other languages than what we have right now. I think that's going to be very powerful, because Rust is very requested, Node.js is very requested, and we don't have a solution for that. We had some minimalist approaches to supporting these, but we are way closer now to actually being able for people to leverage it in those languages. And then we have something, well, obviously incentivization, we talked about that, major deal. Like, once that works, everything is just golden, and we can just work on this forever. But that's an obvious thing. But one thing that I'm really excited about is something we call messaging API. So today, and I've used a lot of protocol names. So if you go develop on Waku, you have to learn a lot. And you've probably experienced that from our documentation and blog posts and tweets and everything. We talk about protocols, we talk about how things work, how they are put together, and there is a lot of information you have to digest. Our goal is, with this messaging API, you just import something, you say start a node, and then you say publish a message and call this method when you receive a message, and that's it. And the messaging is reliable, so I can be sure that when the SDK tells me the message has been sent, it actually has been sent to the network. So if someone else is connected or queries the store, they will get the message. And if I receive a message, I can be sure that it went through some validation, and that I got it in a reasonable, with reasonable latency and all these things. So it's not like a week-old message that was somehow traveling somewhere in the network. And I'm particularly excited about it because I've built something I call Waku Dispatcher, and it was like a wrapper on JS Waku that allowed me to quickly build stuff with Waku without actually thinking about Waku too much. But now we are bringing those features and those reliability features and scalability features into the SDKs themselves. And I'm really excited about that, because that's going to make the development approach and developer experience much, much easier, much better, which will allow us to talk to developers that would otherwise be like, oh man, that's too complicated, I will just go with a server. We had people like that. They were excited about Waku. I want privacy, I want decentralization. And then they started using it, and like, oh man, I just need to build this proof of concept of my application, so I'll just use this server, and then eventually I'll come back and replace it with Waku. And like, well, that's probably never gonna happen because temporary solutions are always forever. But yeah, this will help a lot.
Václav, Aaron, thank you guys so much for your time. It is really incredible to see what you guys are building. I'm definitely going to dive in more. I'm a bit jealous because I actually posted a comment on GitHub about a Q&A idea for Waku, because that was instantly like something that clicked to me. It's like, okay, we can have, because my wife used this app. It's called, what was it? I forgot what it. GL, yeah. She used that, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, But like, then I started realizing, wait, so if I ask like whether it be a private or embarrassing question, these people have it. These people, everyone has it. It's like it failed. Yeah. So that was something that instantly clicked. Making it well, obviously you guys are a protocol, so any group, but making it customizable. So like you just like swap in contract addresses, makes it even more, I think, easy to if you build it in that way. I think it's easier to adopt. Somebody just drops their address in there, or a list of addresses, and it's specialized towards them. But anyway, to take a step back, like it was really nice talking to you guys. And anything that you want to say before we wrap up today? I'll add all the links and also your socials if you'd like in the description so people can find that.
I want to say that I have read your comment and I really like the idea. And I really like that I've already built like 70% of that. So I will definitely want to talk to you at some point about the remaining 30%, and we should build it into Waku. And I have some ideas and plans for that. So that's definitely awesome. In general, to conclude from my perspective, if you are interested in using Waku or understanding Waku better, definitely reach out on our Discord. You can reach out to me or generally to anyone else. We are definitely happy to have calls with projects or developers who are interested and willing to put in the work into understanding Waku a bit and to implement until we have the better APIs. Yeah, please think about decentralization and local first and all these things where you don't rely on running a single server on AWS and that's your, and then blockchain, and then using blockchain, and that's your decentralized application, because the D in the D app then is very, very small.
And these types of connections is what makes me incredibly excited, in that like developers discovering or becoming Waku pilled, or especially those that understand and value privacy and sort of as core tenets, and even those that don't. And as Václav laid out sort of his journey to coming to the perspective that privacy is incredibly important for freedom and humanity, or as a human right. And so the continuing sort of discovery, the continued discovery of developers of Waku, and as Waku matures and becomes easier to implement, keeps me very excited. Like one thing you mentioned just a little bit ago, it's worth touching on for a second, like that meme of you have nothing to hide. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear if you have nothing to hide. It's a powerful meme, compact. It packs a lot in, and I think it's one of the core sort of ideas that maybe we have to fight against. And it's not the easiest. It's not the easiest thing in the world because it's such a powerful and compact meme. But the reality is, like, for the continued the continued freedom of humanity, or in the pursuit of increased freedom for humanity, like privacy is incredibly important. And I would encourage developers to look into Waku and privacy tech in general, and we are certainly here to support, and we welcome you to all of the different community areas, Discord and otherwise.
I think this sells itself, really. Like, a lot of people say, well, if the tech is good, it sells itself. Like when you handed me the card, it's instantly like I know I'm interested in this. And I think it's specialized in a way that, like, as long as you can talk to enough people, you're going to find a huge amount of people that are interested in it, or just going to jump in, because it is like the ideal vision. And not just this, but like Ethereum, Bitcoin, like it is the ideal vision of what we want, or at least what I want from technology. And one thing about that statement is, like, it's true. You have nothing to fear if you have nothing to, like, if you shouldn't be afraid if you're not doing anything wrong. It's definitely true only if all of us are equal in power, and we're not. Like, there are people that are not equal in power and that definitely don't like things, and that'll do bad stuff because they don't like them. So you need to be able to hide. And I think there's like millions of examples over, thousands of years of people getting hurt because they couldn't hide that piece of information. Thank you guys again so much. I'll add your links, and I hope to see you soon. We'll talk again, hopefully.